Hi there, my name is Brendan Lazar. I have ADHD and I managed to get 516 on the MCAT. Yes, I am making that video that everyone seems to make. That said, I wanted to do it a bit differently, so hopefully there's a bit more like value that can come out of it than a typical MCAT video. As well, I wanted to mention for like my regular subscribers that uh, I know that this was supposed to be a different video. I think the final Eon Rose video, but I really want to finish off that series by doing the conference justice. So I need to take a bit longer to finish it, but it will be uploaded one of these weeks. That said, I wanted to make this video interesting, not just for pre-meds students, but also for anyone who is curious about the process in Canada to kind of get into medical school. The MCAT is a big obstacle, and there is so much to it. So unfortunately, I won't be able to cover everything in this video. That said, I do intend to make more content covering the MCAT on stuff that I did not during this video. So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more to come. So just to start, I wanted to kind of cover like what is the MCAT. So the MCAT, otherwise known as the Medical College Admissions Test, is the exam that most students have to take in order to get into medical school. It is notoriously difficult, being one of the hardest exams in the world. And the best analogy I can think of in preparing for it is that it's a lot like running a marathon, in that it requires a lot of training to not just like know things, but also to have the endurance to sit and write for 7.5 hours, just like how you need a lot of endurance to be able to run, say, 42 kilometers. Not only that, but it is also reading intensive. And that's because the questions are based on long passages that you have to be able to read quickly and then use what you've read to answer the questions very quickly. I would always get asked, did you pass your MCAT? Now, I think that a lot of people get asked that, and it's kind of an annoying question because there is no passing or failing the MCAT. There's really just like, you just do it and you get a score. Now, this score is scaled and it lands between 472 to 528. So 528 being the best you can do and 472 being the worst you could do. I do not know the details of how they calculate this scaled score, but it is not like a simple number on the amount of questions you got wrong. It's also determined on the type of questions you get wrong. That said, there is a more easier to understand scoring system that they also use, which is percentile ranking. So percentile ranking essentially tells you where you land relative to other test takers. Now, with the university that I'm aiming for, which is the University of Calgary, their average accepted score in 2020-21 was about 511 to 512. I would set my goal at 511, 512 at least. Now, just to put it in perspective, 511 or 512 is, I think, around an 80 percentile score. So just to translate that, that means that 80% of test takers did not get that score. And then the other 20% did or higher. Now on to how I managed to get a good score. So I registered for this exam a total of 3 times over 3 years. The first time was in 2019. I had just moved out and I was working full-time, so there was like no way I was going to do well. And I decided to just cancel it because I needed to kind of enjoy my summer and take a break. Now the second and actual first time like committing to writing it was in 2020. This was a doozy. The AAMC was a mess during the early days of the pandemic, and I was too. I only got 498 on my first attempt. Now, my third and final time was in 2021, and on that time I got a 516. With the MCAT, the degree that you do and your background really matters. I had just graduated from a Bachelor's of Science with a health science major from Mount Royal University in December 2020, and I found that my degree really helped me with my content review. Now, the schedule matters a lot for the MCAT, and so I wanted to kind of briefly cover what my full schedule looked like for the 6 months that I spent writing. So as a basic overview, I worked on MCAT review from February 2021 to July 2021. Between February 2021 and March 2021, so the first 2 months, I was working at my job a lot and applying for accommodations with some light content review. Once I finished applying for accommodations, which took a lot of time and effort, surprisingly, I left my second job fundraising to spend more time tutoring and reviewing for the MCAT. The heavy content review started in April 2021, and I did that until the end of May 2021. During this time, I also did 2 practice exams just to see how I was doing. Now, finally, my practice exam period started as soon as I got my accommodation application results. This period went for 6 to 7 weeks, and I took a weekly practice exam leading up to my actual exam date, which was on July 21st. So starting with accommodations, it took a lot to apply for accommodations, and this was really surprising to me because most universities that I've dealt with and other systems in Canada have always been very accessible and accommodating, usually with a no questions asked type policy, which is great for privacy. Now, the MCAT is a US-based exam, and it appears that their process to get accommodations reflects a lot of ableism that appears to be present in the US medical system. This made applying for accommodations a total nightmare, as they were very unforgiving. Now, and as well, what I learned from Reddit was that they often never give out accommodations, especially to those with ADHD. So going into it, I wish that I knew just how long it would take to apply. And so my advice is to apply early. Now, in terms of things needed to apply, for ADHD, arguably the most important piece is the personal statement. I spent many hours drafting mine and reviewing it. There is not much guidance on how to write it, and whenever I would ask them questions, they would usually reply saying, we cannot give out that information because it might violate some applicants' privacy. It's like a bit of a non-answer they would always give. Now, I'm going to make a video that will cover the personal statement in depth at some point in time, but make sure to frame it in a way as to how the accommodations will help you level the playing field between other test writers. For me, I focused on my struggles throughout the years, and specifically instances where I did not have accommodations and the consequences of that. So once I finished applying for accommodations, I started more in-depth content review. At the start of my studying, I decided to hire an MCAT tutor off of Kijiji. The MCAT tutor helped guide me to use certain resources I found helpful, and also she helped me stay organized, which I found was really needed given I was studying at home all the time, and that happens to be where all the distractions are. On top of the tutor, I decided to create a Reddit account since I had heard Reddit was an excellent place for information. The resources that I primarily used included the Kaplan Quick Sheets, which became my Bible for high-yield content. I also used the Miles Down Anki card deck, as well as CARS practice materials from AAMC, including Jack Weston, as well as the AAMC material like the chemistry and physics question packs. I would use the Kaplan Quick Sheets to reference what was a high-yield concept, and then I would search in the Miles Down cards and find a card on that subject and then add it to my own deck. I found that worked really well to keep me working at my own pace and ensuring that I was covering or seeing all of the content that was supposed to be on the MCAT. Now, about a week and a half into my content review, I took a full-length AAMC exam to see where I was at. I ended up scoring 502, which was still off from my goal of 510, so I had some work to do. In terms of how I studied to kind of combat my ADHD, I found that the Anki card system was the best to help me retain things. Because, with ADHD, I think memory is usually affected. Now, if you are unaware, why Anki cards are so good is because they use the psychology of learning to ensure that you do not forget things. So specifically, it uses the concept of spaced repetition. Essentially, you will do a card and then it will show you it again tomorrow. Now, if you get it right the next day, it will show you it again in 3 days. Now, this interval will keep increasing as long as you keep getting it correct. This is excellent for time management because it ensures that you are only reviewing cards you need to. As well, because I bought the phone app, I actually did a lot of my content review just sitting on the toilet as I was going through my cards. But man, was it ever nice to just be able to study on my phone. Now, at the tail end of my review period, which was about May 25th-ish, I took the free Kaplan practice exam with normal time. I was worried that I wouldn't get the accommodations I requested, so I thought that I should take an exam to see how I would do with just normal time. I scored 500, which was not what I envisioned, but the other great thing about Reddit was that I found out that most third-party exams are deflated, so that my likely score on an AAMC exam was probably going to be higher. That said, I still had like another 2 weeks to finish up reviewing, so I finished up my review for biochemistry before I would begin my weekly practice exams. Now, my practice exam period began with me hearing back on what accommodations I could get. So while I applied for time and a half accommodations, they only gave me time and a quarter and stop the clock breaks. Their reasoning for that was really weird, and I think I'll cover it in another video. But I decided to kind of take what I could get and start doing my weekly practice exams. It was helpful to finally know what I could get, because it felt like now I could fully try to simulate testing conditions as close as possible. So I bought the Next Step exam package since I heard from Reddit that Next Step was the best third-party exams. On the first Next Step exam, I managed to score 510, and I was thrilled. It was really rewarding to suddenly have this score increase, especially because 2 weeks earlier I had 10 points below. So following that, my scores though were never stable, and it was kind of nerve-wracking. So in the following exams, Next Step 2, I scored 508. Next Step 3, I scored 509. So the one thing to note though with Next Step exams is that the CARS is not representative at all. So because of that, I decided I should probably switch to AAMC material. And since I had already done some of the practice exams from last year, I had to redo the sample exam. So redoing the sample exam, I scored 514. But since I did it before, like in 2020, I didn't really trust the score. So then the next week I did AAMC full length 3. But then I scored 507, and I had like a huge panic attack. I did not finish the CARS section in time, and I was super worried. After that, I saw moderate success on the full length 4 and managed to get about 511 with a 127 in CARS. That said, I was still feeling unsafe since my score was only like just 511 and not over 511 going into the real exam, which was next week. Now, the days before your real exam, everybody always says to take it easy, and I now know that they are right. One of my mistakes was redoing a practice exam section or two the day before my exam. This made me fatigued for the real thing, and I totally thought that I had botched the first section. I remember not remembering a very basic concept on light, like what is the wavelength of like blue light or something, and I was like, oh my god. Anyways, I did make sure to take a nice break though, and make myself tired enough to get sleepy by going on a 10-kilometer run with my dog the day before the exam. Now with accommodations, the exam is split into 2 days. On the first day, I made sure to arrive early, and I drank half of a Red Bull before the chem section and the second half during the break before the CARS section. I found that the Red Bull really helped me stay alert and focused given my ADHD between the sections. The following evening, I did very minimal content review, just like Anki cards, and I went for a bike ride. On the final day, the bio section felt good, and I got extremely lucky for the psych section. I had done a research project the year before on a niche concept called RSA, which is related to stress and thus psychology. I just so happened to get a full passage on my exam on RSA, and man was I ever happy. Regardless, my final score ended up being 516, with a 129 on the chemical and physical section, 128 on the CARS, 128 on the bio section, and 131 on the psych section. It was a difficult journey, and I was spending up to 40 hours a week studying near the end of it. Unfortunately, I did not get into medicine for last cycle, but I am very happy to probably never have to take this exam again. Anyways, be sure to like and subscribe. I will make MCAT related videos down the line because I feel like there's a lot that I have to say about it, particularly in regards to the accommodations, because when I was applying for the accommodations, I found that there was not enough resources out there to help me. But if you are applying for accommodations right now, definitely check out Reddit. Reddit has some really good resources. You can also try to contact me, and I might be able to help you with that. Anyways, take care, and I'll see you next time.